It's hard to believe, but The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt officially turned 10 years old earlier this year. And despite this game coming out an entire decade ago, in many ways, it doesn't feel like it's aged a single day. The Witcher 3 is one of the greatest games ever made, and even though it's a 2015 game at its core, it's still head and shoulders above the vast majority of action RPGs we get today. I recently picked up this game again for probably the third or fourth or fifth time, and despite just planning on messing around with it for a couple of hours, it immediately sucked me back into its world, and I've been obsessively playing The Witcher 3 like it's 2015 all over again. So in this video, I want to talk about just what it is that makes this game so damn special, and why in my eyes, no other action RPG has ever been able to measure up to this masterpiece. So, I think when starting a discussion about The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, you have to start with its story. And I think that's where most people start, but it's warranted here. One of the beauties of The Witcher 3's story is that it's so simple, and that it manages to pull you in and hook you, even if you know nothing about The Witcher or the extended lore on display here. So speaking for myself personally, going into The Witcher 3 when I started it up a decade ago at this point, I knew very, very little about the Witcher franchise. I never read the books. To this day, I've never seen the TV show or anything like that. Don't really care about this IP at all. Really, my only experience going into The Witcher 3 was that I had played The Witcher 2. And I enjoyed it, but eventually I kind of fell off of it, and it didn't really hook me in the way I was hoping. So going into The Witcher 3 was kind of like a fresh slate for me. I didn't know a lot of these characters. I didn't know what was going on. And I was kind of just learning as I went along. But like I said, that's the beauty here. The story at the heart of The Witcher 3 is so simple. Ciri, who is Geralt, the main character's basically his daughter, she's missing. Nobody knows where she is, and you start to learn that she is on the run from a dangerous entity called the Wild Hunt. They're hunting her, they want her elder blood, and she's in grave danger. So the entire main pull of the main story is that you are just looking for essentially your daughter and trying to save her from this horrific harm that is probably going to come her way. Very easy to get emotionally invested in this, even if you don't care about Geralt or Ciri or even really know who these characters are. It's very easy to just get invested in this simple hook. And then as you go along the story and you meet these other characters and the characters you know get fleshed out, you start to really become attached to everybody, and you start to realize the weight and the breadth of what's going on, and the game just really starts to get its hooks into you from a story point of view. So by the end of The Witcher 3, when I played it all those years ago, I loved these characters. I loved Geralt. I loved Ciri. I was very invested in Geralt's love life and who he was going to end up with, and it's just so well told that you really begin to care about everything going on here and all the characters. Again, even if you didn't care about them at all going in. And I think that is a sign of a really great story. It is so well told, and it's so emotional, and it's incredibly well done. But that is just the main story. And I think as most people, most fans of this game will tell you, the game's real strength from a story point of view comes from the side content. I have never played an RPG other than this game where the side missions feel just as important and fleshed out as the main mission. I mean, there is truly unmatched quality and storytelling on display when it comes to The Witcher 3's side content. I was just playing last night and I stumbled upon a Witcher contract mission, which are basically exactly what they sound like. You can pick up Witcher contracts as you play and you slay monsters that need slaying and that sort of thing. And last night I came across one that I don't think I've ever done in my previous playthroughs. And it was on Skellige, and you have to go into a small village and slay a Leshen, which is like a forest creature that is like terrorizing the village. And I know it's a 10-year-old game, but I'm not going to go into spoilers, even up for this side mission. But by the time I finished this, I was completely floored by how the story was told, what is happening, the weight of the situation, how dark and depressing and kind of shitty it makes you feel after you finish it. And this is all coming from a side mission and not even a fully fleshed out like side quest. This is a Witcher contract. It's just picking up a contract to kill a monster. And I feel like in so many other RPGs, this would be like the bottom of the barrel when it came to content. You would pick up this contract and you would go and you would kill the monster and you would get your XP rewards and you would move on. Basically like the filler of all filler missions is kind of how I believe this would be handled in similar games. But in this game, in The Witcher 3, it is a deep, fleshed out, depressing saga with multiple parties involved and big choices you have to make. And it's just so well done. And every single mission and contract and side quest, they are all like this. It's incredible the amount of love and attention that went into creating the side quests in this game. I mean, it floors me every time I play it. It never gets old. And it's truly one of The Witcher 3's greatest strengths. And in many ways, I think that's one of the biggest things that sets it apart, because no other action RPGs are on this level when it comes to its side content. It is truly impressive. So I think The Witcher 3 is pretty unrivaled in that regard. I think what's interesting when people talk about this game is when people do try to find things to criticize, a lot of the time I feel like its combat gets brought up. People say, oh, its combat is a weak point in the game, or, oh, it's just fine, it's just kind of there. But I disagree. I mean, The Witcher 3's combat, sure, it's not going to completely compare to modern action games being made in 2025 where the focal point is the combat. But at the same time, I still feel like The Witcher 3's combat is really well done. I mean, Geralt feels like a total badass when you're controlling him. Combat is fast and fluid, you're moving around in a satisfying manner. Sword strikes feel weighty, and then when you mix in your signs and you're blasting fire at the monsters and everything, it feels very good and responsive and fluid. Again, yeah, it's not the focal point, it's not the game's greatest strength, but I think it's still handled very well. And I find myself, as I'm playing this game, I'm always looking forward to the next combat encounter. Sometimes I feel like combat's not in there enough, and I'm just itching to get to the next combat sequence so I can just wail on some monsters with my build that I've spent so much time on. So I think it's handled very well. And I think what makes it even better is that so much of the combat equation is handled prior to the battles as well. When you're preparing for a big fight, maybe on some huge ass monster that you have a contract on, I mean, a lot goes into the preparation for that fight. You have to research the monster in your log and find out what its weaknesses are. If you really want to get an advantage, you can brew some potions, apply certain oils to your swords. I mean, there's so much that goes into it from a preparation standpoint that I think it just enhances the combat so much, and it makes the entire sequence and all the combat encounters just that much more satisfying. And I do think that gets overlooked when people criticize The Witcher 3's combat, because I do think that's an integral part of it, and I do think that it adds so much to the equation. And then speaking of just having so much, I think that I'd be remiss to not hit on just how much content is in The Witcher 3. I mean, not only does this continue to be one of the most impressive games I've ever played here in 2025, it also has to be one of the biggest. There are multiple maps with huge areas and so many different settlements to explore and get lost in. And not to go off on too much of a tangent, but I really do think that's one of the best things about The Witcher 3 is its towns and its settlements. They actually feel like real lived-in places in a way that I've never really seen in another game of this kind. You get to some of the big settlements, the big cities and the capital and all that, and buildings are everywhere. There's NPCs covering the streets. Everybody's going about their day. There's so many nooks and crannies to get lost in. And I mean, you can legitimately get lost in some of these cities. And, you know, you compare this to some other action RPGs of the time. And you know, I like I've said in other videos, I love Bethesda. I love their RPGs. But you look at Skyrim or Fallout, franchises that I love to death, but some of the main settlements in those games, I mean, there's like 9 people who live there, right? I mean, it's just a completely different sort of scope is on display here in The Witcher 3. And I think that would be impressive if just there was just one map in this game because there was so much going on in these worlds and these maps. I would be blown away if there was just that one map. But like I said, there are 3 huge maps to explore. All of them look vastly different. They have different cultures, the people speak in different accents. They have different beliefs. They treat you differently. I mean, it is such a fleshed out world that you just do not see in other games. Add in the fact that now in 2025, there are 2 incredible expansions that you can play. I think to this day, I've only dabbled in them for the most part, so I'm super excited to get lost in them this playthrough. I mean, this has to be one of the biggest games ever made. From a real estate point of view, I mean, the world itself is massive, but it's not massive for just massive. It's not massive just for the sake of being massive. It is densely populated with people and quests and activities and secrets to find and collectibles. Obviously, 2016, it wasn't a lifetime ago, but the fact that this game came out 10 years ago, it just kind of blows my mind. Because like I said, from a size point of view, from a story point of view, I don't think we've seen anything like it in the last decade. So the amount of content here is incredible. And what's great is it's better than ever now in 2025. I've been playing on the next gen version on my PS5. I think it's the definitive edition or whatever it's called. And it's got all the content, obviously, from the base game, the DLCs, but it just looks so good. The frame rate is as smooth as butter 60. The lighting is incredible. I think, you can sometimes see the game's age and character models and how people walk and move a little bit. But when you're walking through the world and that sunlight hits perfectly and the screen is just illuminated, it looks incredible. I think from a lighting point of view, it's still some of the best graphics that I've ever seen, even in 2025. And it's just such a great time to play this game with this current next-gen version. They even add cool little things. There's a great photo mode in here that I've really been taking advantage of. One of the coolest things I think they added is that there's a new camera angle where you can really get the camera right up against Geralt, so it's kind of a little bit more cinematic because the camera's so close to him, almost kind of like a Batman Arkham sort of camera point of view, which I think is really cool. I've really tried to play with this because I do think it looks so badass and I want to experience the game in a different way, but I'm just so used to the default camera view. I've played so many hours of the base game that it's just hard for me to train my brain to do something so drastically different. But the fact that that's here, along with so many other things, so many other quality of life improvements and options, it's just, I mean, the base Witcher 3 was a great game, but now it's impeccable. It's better than ever. And of course, the cherry on top, the one thing that I do just have to bring up anytime I talk about The Witcher 3, Gwent is just the greatest side game ever made in any video game ever. This card game is so freaking fun. It's so easy to learn the basics, but it's also very challenging when you get further into the game, and there's actually some pretty deep mechanics on display. And it's so perfectly interweaving with the story itself. Everybody plays Gwent. There's always an opportunity to find new cards, to buy new cards, to unlock rare cards, and you're constantly making your deck better as you play. It is just so seamlessly incorporated in the main gameplay that it's just, I mean, again, not to overuse this, but it just kind of blows my mind how well done this is. And if you don't care about Gwent, you really don't have to touch it outside of maybe a mission or two. But I don't think I've ever met somebody who has played this game and did not at least get a little bit invested in Gwent. It is such a great side game, and I don't think any video game has ever come close to having a side game as well done, as fun, and addicting as Gwent is here. It is such a blast. And even in this latest playthrough, I've spent, again, way too much time just getting lost in Gwent and tinkering with my decks, and it's just so much fun to be playing that card game again on top of the main Witcher 3 experience. So there you have it. Like I said, this is going to be kind of a rambly video, kind of just my unofficial love letter to The Witcher 3. I love this game. It is one of my favorite games of all time, And like I said, it is better than ever in 2025. And I still believe that if you compare it to any other action RPG that we've gotten in the last decade, I still think The Witcher 3 comes out on top. I don't think anything can top this game in this genre. So if you're watching this video and for some reason you have not played this game, unlikely, I know, but seriously, you owe it to yourself. Drop any other game you're playing and pick this one up, because I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is a masterpiece, and even though it is now a decade old, which is a little bit alarming, it's better than ever, and it's still, in the year 2025, one of the greatest video games you can ever play. That's all I got today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. It really does mean a lot to me. And once again, thanks for clicking on the video. Thanks for being here, and I will see you on the next one.